Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Helen Grime, and I'm the composer of two of the works on tonight's programme. And this is Dictina Hood, who has written the words for our new commission, Seasons. So we thought we'd start tonight by just saying a little bit about ourselves, telling you a bit about our work, and then we'll talk more about the new piece. So there's two works of mine on the programme. The first is called Bright Travellers, and this is actually how I met Joseph Middleton. I wrote the piece in 2017. It was premiered in 2018, and Joe was playing piano, and he did such an amazing job. So this was with Ruby Hughes, a wonderful soprano, and they went on to record the piece and play it many times. So I know what an amazing musician Joe is. So I was just absolutely delighted when he suggested that I write a piece for lead song. And it's something that we've been trying to make happen for a couple of years, really, and I'm so delighted that it's happening tonight, but also that I had the chance to work with Dictina. So over the last few years, or since 2017, I've been very lucky to work with a number of living writers. So Bright Travellers, the piece which you're also going to hear tonight, I didn't actually work with the poet, wonderful poet Fiona Benson, but we did meet, and she came to the premiere. And more recently, I've written quite a lot of vocal music. I wrote a big piece for soprano and orchestra to a libretto by Zoe Gilbert. And so this is the most recent project with Dictina, and it's been a very new and exciting process for me, which is feeding into my creativity in lots of unexpected ways.
So my name's Dictina. I have had what I think is called a portfolio career. I have made some films, I have written some screenplays, and I used to write a lot of poetry when I was very small. Got knocked out of me at secondary school, went into other forms of writing. Screenwriting is actually quite condensed and very poetic. But during the lockdowns, a wonderful writer called Jackie Pavlenko set up some writing workshops online, and I started writing poems again, for which I'm incredibly grateful. Helen and I had been introduced by a dramaturg called Henrietta Breeden with the idea of making an opera together. Now, some years ago, perhaps just post-COVID. So we were discussing some seasonally relevant ideas for an opera. I don't know whether you want to say anything about summer.
Yes, so we had talked about adapting. I don't know if anyone knows the short novel Summer by Edith Wharton, which is just an incredible book. And so we talked about adapting that, and that didn't work out in the end. But I think many of the kinds of themes that are in that book have somehow found their way into this piece. And I think what's interesting about how we met and how we've worked together is that we may have worked towards an opera, but all of those things over the years have now been channeled into this piece. So when the summer idea didn't quite work out, we started talking about a new idea. I think we're both quite interested in the Gothic and quite dark things, the afterlife, folk, fairy tales, all of these kind of things. So we had much common ground.
Yes, we found on the train this morning when we put our books out, they were quite inclined towards themes of death and rebirth and myth and planting seeds and growing, falling, these kind of ideas. So
we wanted for those things to be present in the piece tonight, and I think that's what's so amazing about the seasons, is that they're so kind of universal and symbolic, really. So there's a lot of darkness in the piece, but there's also a lot of hope and brightness. These ideas of spring and even what can come after death. So I think there's a lot of that into it. I think maybe we should talk a little bit about what it's like for me to work with poems by someone who I can talk to and I can discuss and I can find all the background to. When I'm looking for words to set, generally, I never know quite what I'm looking for, but I do know that there's a certain feeling that I get when I find something that I feel that I want to respond to musically, and that I feel that I can maybe add something to, or that I think a lot about transformation, and when you take a poem and you make it into a song, it goes through a kind of transformation and it becomes something completely different. But I always have to see that or hear that somehow when I'm looking. And with all the poetry that I've set, that is what I'm looking for, and that's what I get with your words. So when we started writing the piece, Dick Tinner sent me a lot of different poems with a lot of different themes, but several of them just really stood out, and they just got me. They just, they really got me in the gut, and I'm looking for that kind of emotional connection, really, and that's what I'm trying to do in my music too. Do you think that it might be good to, would you like to hear the poems read by Dick Tinner? Because it's such a strange, I wonder, Dick Tinner, I don't think you've worked with a composer setting your words before, have you?
No, absolutely not. I was quite overwhelmed in the rehearsal this afternoon, because the words, I'll read them for you in a very neutral way, but believe me, it's a different item altogether when they are shaped by music and song. But shall we read them briefly, just so you have them in your minds? I think it's worth saying that they are lockdown poems, so all we had at that time was walks and nature, if you were lucky, which I was. And I also had a dying person, not of COVID, but a dying person around. So I think that was kind of coming into them somehow. So winter. Do you want me to read one at a time, Helen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Winter. A part of me is outside with you, looking at my lighted windows, coming to crack open my pipes, to stab my warm round belly with your cold dagger, to abseil into my sitting room, to touch my surfaces with quietness, not from anger nor in stealth. I am held within your physics, be you snowflake or frost.
And so with that poem, when I take a poem and I start to work on it, it has to become something other even before I start writing music, and I start to look and think about creating a structure. I have to understand it on some level. So what was amazing working with Dick Tinner was being able to say, well, I think this, but is it okay for me to think this? Is this right? Or is this how you see it? And actually, if I don't see it in the same way, that's kind of interesting too, because we all have different interpretations of what we read and what we listen to and so on, and different perspectives. But I look to find a kind of structure. But for me, there are certain phrases or words that are so striking in the poems. So I immediately know that maybe those are the moments that I'm going to focus in on, or that, you know, something is a particular atmosphere where the climax is going to be, you know, the kind of, whether it's going to be a fast moving song, whether it's going to be slow moving, which is something that when we were putting the order of the poems together and when we were choosing the poems is very important to me, because with a song cycle you have to think on the kind of the larger structural level. How are these songs going to sit beside each other? How are they going to work as a cycle? What is the connection between these going to be? Do I want them to be connected? How contrasted are they going to be? But also they have to work as individual songs, or they should really work. You should be able to take each song and it should work as a little miniature on its own. And I think that working with your poems was absolutely perfect for this. But you also had several different poems for each season, didn't you?
I did, because we went through 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3 years of being in the same place, looking at the seasons. Shall I read the spring one?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a pagan Easter hymn. Clouds roll back from early mist. Across the field, hare's ear listens, even though I did not see. On the sunny path among small flowers, moths vibrating hover, hoover nectar. Praise, 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 even if you don't believe.
So I love this poem, and to me actually it was, you know, it's interesting that you did write it in lockdown, because we did have that amazing, beautiful spring. The weather was so, I mean, it was a very difficult time, but it was kind of, when you did have those moments in a park or in the garden, you could take beauty in those small things, in the blossom, in the new life, that things were continuing somehow, or I was able to, in those moments, focus on those things. And there's a kind of course, religious, like you say, pagan. It's a pagan hymn. But with this poem, I had to seek Dictina's permission to do something kind of drastic to it. So in the first poem, I kind of set it as is, although I do repeat each line. In the first half of the poem, I repeat each line twice. But in this poem, I was just very struck by the line praise, 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 and there's a full stop after each praise. And I just thought, this is what, after working on it for a couple of weeks, this is what this song is. It's about praise, and I need for there to be more praises. So I took the praise, which is actually what I see as the kind of the climax of the poem. And how many lines down is it? It's kind of towards the end. And so I open with praise, 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 and then it comes in the middle, and then it comes near the end. And each time you hear it, each time Louise sings it, and she sings it in a magnificent way, she's incredibly virtuosic. It becomes more ornate, it becomes sort of more virtuosic, and it's higher and it's more climactic. So you get this sense of that building each time. So it was just a joy to work with those words.
This is summer. These peonies stupefy me. Even the bee sleeps drunk inside a bower of petals, drowning in organza. Will you come and save me before these flowers take me down, falling with their weight and mine in a torrent of cream?
And I love that, because it's kind of light and it's fluffy, and it's this was the one that we said that there's a moment in the book Summer, which we both loved, where the main character, I can't remember her name now.
Can't remember her name. Of
course. But anyhow, there's a moment where she lies on the ground and she has her face in the grass, and she is just so at one with nature and the sight, the smell and the sounds of everything. And that's what I get when I hear that poem. It's like you're enveloped in this kind of blissful heavy summer. So I tried to do that a little bit. I don't know if it will come across, but Joe has a lot of notes to play in this, but it's fast, but it's kind of slow. So he's playing at the very bottom of the piano and the very top of the piano, and then Louise has this very kind of lazy melody which falls right between, in the middle register between those two things. So he's kind of, I imagined, enveloping her in a kind of hazy organza. So that I was very struck with that. I did worry. It's interesting the problems that you think might arise when first looking at the poems and when I'm initially planning, and I think they might not be a word. I don't like to work with too many words, because words need a lot of space in music. You know, you don't need so many words as you do in a play or, you know, a film script. They need a lot of space for us to be able to hear them. But I did worry that they wouldn't be enough words. But in the end, I don't think I even repeated anything in this one. I think I set it absolutely as is, and I didn't do any sort of cutting and splicing and putting things at the front or the middle or the back, I think. Unless I'm forgetting. Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
So this is autumn. Autumn. Bring out our dead, wrap them close, let them rot. Let the vultures take them. If there are no vultures, ring the crows. If there are no crows, ring the sparrows. Cry, eat our dead, you sparrows. There they are. Blow, winds, blow. Let the spring come.
So this was a poem that made me think, I have to set this, like I have to. I just think it's incredibly striking. It moves me to read it, to hear it. And without, I mean, I think I did, on some level, I think it's very clear. The words in your poems are very clear. The meanings are very clear. There's no, of course there are many layers, but it's not like kind of interpreting or, you know, codes and signs and so on. But as well as the words having this very immediate effect, I think there are layers of kind of ancientness and grief there that feels, again, very, very universal, and something that people have been, you know, feeling throughout the ages. And again, you wrote that in lockdown, and, you know, that seems very kind of fitting, really. The other thing that I loved about this poem was it just sounds musical, and even just hearing it there, the rhythm. There are certain images in it, like blow, wind. The way you repeat words, blow, winds, blow, wind, blow. Immediately, I was saying earlier, it reminds me of, and I hope it's Tennyson, but it reminds me of another poem, and it makes me think. Again, I don't know, it makes me think of blow bugles, blow it. There's lots of different things. It taps into, I think there are resonances with other poetry. I hope you don't mind me saying that. I certainly don't mind that in my music, and it's something I embrace. I want to be part of a tradition, part of a history, but I want to do that in a very personal way. And that's what I get from this poem. And so with this, I just knew that, one, I wanted to set it, and two, that I wanted the piece to end with it, because it's so striking, and it has a funereal quality that I wanted, a processional quality. So the way that I have set it really is that Joe has a kind of repeating rhythmic pattern, and this is varied a little bit throughout. And over this, Louise has a very, very free line. And there's a particular point which I think just, it's strange that I know these poems so well, and I know them off by heart, but only if I'm singing the music in my head. So now I have to look. But there are so many parts, but particularly this, ring the sparrows, cry, eat our dead. And there's something so kind of raw. So the whole thing is really a build-up to this climax of cry. Cry, eat our dead, you sparrows, there they are. And yeah, it's just, yeah, there's a poem that I think will stay with me for a very long time.
We noticed this afternoon that by choosing to end on the autumn, you have to go through the winter before you come back to the spring. So it had a particular effect. We hope you enjoy.
Yeah, and you know, for me personally, working with you on this, it's, as I say, I've worked with another poet directly while writing a piece, and that was a piece called Folk, with Zoe Gilbert, who again is a brilliant writer and someone who I've got to know quite well, but I didn't know her. I think we got to know each other quite well, but yes, quite well during this whole process of thinking about an opera and thinking about common ground and thinking about how, you know, different areas of our work could feed into each other's creative practice. And to me, that it makes the process quite different. What was interesting was that I got in touch with you, I think, near the beginning of each song as I was writing it, although I may not have with the last one. But at a certain point, I just had to just not think about what you would think. And also not care. That sounds awful. And I did this a little bit today, actually, because we are both, you know, obviously I've written the piece and I know what I think it sounds like in my head, but it's always different when it's brought to life, you know, and it's now taken over by the performers and it becomes something else again. And that is a wonderful thing, but it can be quite an overwhelming process. And so I was very focused on that, and I was kind of like to Dicton, I was like, could you maybe sit further back, because I can't deal with worrying about also what you think about this piece while I'm worrying about what I'm thinking, what everyone else thinks. So yes, there's that. So letting the thing go is a whole other thing. But I'm interested to hear from you. I know you've only heard it once in rehearsal, but is it very strange, you know, when you read the poems and they have a sort of rhythm and so on, the rhythm is completely changed and stretched out and disfigured, really, when it's set to music. And how does that feel? Is it strange?
No. I mean, it's strange because it's just another thing. It just becomes another thing. It's another thing. And I think the thing is that the groundwork of getting to know a creative person. I mean, if for example, you're writing a film script, it can be either destroyed by another director, or it can be completely opened, enhanced, made something you could never imagine. Mm-hmm. So the key is to sort of start the collaboration well, and then as the writer you certainly have to give it away, and then you come back and it's like Christmas.
Yeah, no, I have heard kind of horror stories of writers, composers working with writers, and writers being incredibly controlling about their poems and not letting them go, and actually quite sort of damaging then when it gets to performance, like, oh, you're going to have to change this and you're going to have to do that, and it's kind of like, well, no, it's mine now. So, but you know, it is incredibly important to me that I do show respect, and I think with any of the kind of big changes that I was making, I did definitely want to be respectful, because, you know, I love the poems, and so I want to do them as much justice as I possibly can, and I hope I've done that. Should I say a little bit about the other piece before you hear it to introduce it? How are we doing for time? I don't think we've got time, which is fine. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask at all? No problems if not, but hi. Yes. Well, this one will be released I think shortly. I think probably there'll be corrections. But the other piece, Bright Travellers, is on sale, and it's recorded as well. So, yeah. Anyone else? That's fine. Well, we're delighted to have been able to come along and introduce ourselves and introduce a new piece a bit to you today, and I hope you enjoy the recital. Great.